All right, guys, I want to welcome everybody to another weekly episode of Conversations with Cougars. We took off last week for Thanksgiving. Hope everybody had an enjoyable time off, safe and quiet, low key, a lot of football. But I want to welcome my guests tonight, Wayne and Gantt Pierce out of Dothan. Welcome, fellas. It's good to see you both. I appreciate you spending some time with us tonight.
Well, we appreciate it. We're glad to be here tonight, and I'm not sure you get the thank you that you deserve for doing all of this. This is a great thing that you've put together, and something that I've learned about recently. And I'm just excited to have something like this that we can tune into and be a part of.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure, guys. It's just my way of really getting to know Cougars from all generations, all 41 years. It's creating a bit of an oral history of our program, if you will. And it really is just connecting people during this pandemic, and gives us a good hour of an outlet. Some laughs, some memories will be shared, some of which will actually be true. Others we think they're true, but anyway, it's good to see you both, and I appreciate you making some time. And as folks roll into the program, I'll give you a shout out, let you know who they are, so you can say hello. And for those of you guys who maybe are of different generations or don't know Wayne and Gantt, let me give you just a little bit of background. You may recognize Wayne, but not necessarily in the clothing that he's wearing tonight. You've seen him on the sidelines for how many years? 35, close to 40 years?
This was my 28th year.
28 years on the sidelines. Well, I shouldn't even say on the sidelines. In between the white lines, calling games all through the Wiregrass. And Wayne, we thank you for all those years of service. I suspect some of the time it was as much fun for you as it was the players on the field, but I'm sure you had other games that you don't necessarily think that were that fun. But thank you for doing all that officiating and calling it like you see it.
I appreciate that. I've enjoyed it. It's been a great ride. I got to meet a lot of people, got to see a lot of athletes over the year that went on to the next level and then on to the next level. And I look back and on those players and coaches, and nothing but fond memories out of those 28 years. Actually, I think I've been calling a little bit longer than that, but the state I think they only started keeping records on officials in maybe 85 or something like that. But I've got at least 28 years, but they did send me my 30-year card this year. The state sends all the officials that have made at least 30 years, they send them a card that gets them into any sporting event that the HSA sponsors. So it's kind of a nice little thank you also.
Oh, that's an awesome recognition. Now, the fella sitting next to him is also an official in the Alabama High School Athletics Association. But before he got to that title, and before he became an attorney by his profession today, his other profession, Gantt was on the Northview team from 1999 to 2002, played for Coach Emory Latta back in the day. Gantt, it's good to see you as well, my friend.
It's great to be here. It has allowed me to go back and relive maybe a little bit, look at some pictures, look at some things that I've not looked at in a very long time. And man, it brings back a lot of feelings, a lot of great feelings and thoughts of people that I was able to play with, coaches I was able to play for. And so it's been really fun kind of reliving some of that over the past couple of weeks.
Well, good deal. And I'm going to challenge you both, more particularly you, Gantt, that when we get finished, if you have any memorabilia, any jerseys, any pictures that you want to share in our group, please feel free to post them or send them to me and I'll be glad to post them. But we've got some Cougars who've rolled in. I want to share some names with you. And some folks you may recognize, some that you may not from other generations or other years. Cam Cobb has joined us, Jason Keel, Ryan Williams, to name a few.
Several of those guys, very good friends. One of the great things about when you play a sport with somebody is that it's been 20 years since I've seen some of these guys probably, but I guarantee you if I saw them today, you still feel that brotherhood, you still feel that friendship, you still feel that bond, because in a way you went to war with each other and on Friday nights and you share that still. And so it's great to see some of those guys, hear some of those guys' names. And, I'd love for us all to get together here soon.
Well, and that's what it's all about. Even we really can't, as long as we're in this weird time of our lives, we're at least getting together virtually. But I suspect, Gantt, you've got friends from back in the day that all you have to say is one word or one phrase or one, maybe even a look at certain buddies of yours from back in the day. And you may not have seen them, like you said, in 20 years, but it'll instantly take you back to whatever that event is that y'all shared as a common bond, whether it was good or bad, you all were there at the time. Now, the challenge though of that is who really has the best memory? Did it really occur the way in your mind as you think of it now, as opposed to, I swear there were 40,000 people in Rip Hughes that night when there were really 8,000, that kind of thing. That's always fun.
Yeah. And, people talk about certain things that happen and they have their own memories, and it's not something necessarily that I could remember from that circumstance. In fact, I've thought about it over the years, and I don't have a lot of specific memories from football. There's some here and there, but it's always fun talking to other guys that I played with because they'll have specific memories from certain games or things that we did or things that we went through that they bring up, and it sparks that memory, and you have the opportunity to hear that and think about it and stuff that is not up there until they say something. So that's always really cool.
Yeah, and that's with all these discussions I've been having all year from guys my year or year ahead of me or a year behind me that we were on the teams together. They'll bring up something that either I'd completely forgotten about or things I never knew. So I'm learning all kind of good stuff. But Wayne, I want to ask you, how did you get into being an official? What was it about doing that sparked an interest and then a continued interest all these years?
Well, I finished at the University of Alabama in 1980, but in 1978, I had a guy that was in my economics class. His name was Robert Arndt. I remember the name well, remember Robert well. We were in class one day. He was sitting behind me. He said, "Hey, you want to pick up a few extra dollars?" And I said, "Well, yeah, what are we going to do?" He said, "Well, the intramural department needs some officials. And, if you want to go and I'm doing it, if you want to do it, let's do it." So I went over to see Lou Bostic, was a guy off of Coach Bryant's staff. He was the director of intramural sports at Alabama. Went over to his office, sat down, talked to him. I didn't know a thing about officiating, and he told me what he needed and told what they would pay, and I started officiating on intramural sports at Alabama. And this after I graduated from Alabama, I worked in Tuscaloosa calling football, and then we moved to Mississippi where Gantt was born. I didn't call over there because I had a job that really required a lot of time. And so then we moved back to Alabama, and been doing it ever since.
Awesome. Now, again, I don't want to skip around a whole lot, but I know after Northview, you played baseball at Lipscomb, and I know that you called games in Nashville for a little bit. While you were either in high school or at Lipscomb, did you get into officiating during that time, or did it wait until you were after finished with Lipscomb?
Dad used to do some Pee-wee stuff on Saturdays when we lived in New Orleans. And I can remember going out with him on Saturdays, and we'd spend the whole day at the football field, and I would run the clip or, do something like that on the chain crew. So I might get up there in years as to how long he's been in officiating, in that tenure. But I've been around officials for my entire life. When I got into kind of officiating on the field was in Nashville. I was in college and Dad said, "Hey, why don't you do this?" And I kind of never really thought about it, but got into it. Actually, me and one of my roommates, I got into it the first year, and then my roommate kind of got into it the next year. And then, in law school, obviously, you don't have time to do all that. So I kind of took a sabbatical while I was in law school. And then when me and my wife moved to Dothan right after law school, we had passed the bar. We get to Dothan, and it was a cool opportunity for me to join up with Dad. Dad kind of went out on a limb and took me and two guys who are now my best friends, a guy named John Calhoun and Owen Clark. He took all of us rookies. We formed that was back in 5-man crew when we ran 5 men, and we had our own crew, and we started our crew and kind of went out there. He probably had a rough couple of years with us rookies, but we got the opportunity to get into it, and we've been doing it ever since. We've kept that core group for the most part. Us 4, we've been doing it for the last close to 10 years.
Well, Wayne, I've got to ask you, you got 3 rookies, you got yourself, you got a 5th man. Are you still speaking to that 5th man these days?
Yeah, we're still pretty much together, but part of my gray hair on my head is taking a bunch of new guys out. In fact, I remember one of the first games we had, not Gantt, but the guy working across from him, John Calhoun, we had an inverted whistle. And about football, but in officiating circles, an inverted whistle is the cardinal sin. You just don't, they happen. Everybody's had them. I've had them, but it's, the outcome is never a good outcome, especially if a guy's ripping off a 70-yard run and for a touchdown, and you've got an inverted whistle, and you've got to tell the coach that scored, "Hey, we got to bring this one back," or whatever. It's never good. So, but no, we got through it. We worked through it. But these guys grew and matured faster as officials than any group I've ever worked with. And we certainly went through some hard times, but we went through some good times. And the camaraderie in officiating is like football almost. I mean, it is, I suppose, because you get close to the guys you work with, you go to war. Nobody really cares anything about you except each other. And so when you walk out on a football field, half the group loves you, maybe, if they're winning. The other half hate you. And at the end of the game, both of them are mad at you. And but we went to war with these guys, and it's like Gantt described earlier, it's a bond that you build that lasts for years.
Well, Gantt, there's nothing like on-the-job training, whether you're in the courtroom or between the white lines. And that's what I want to ask you, which you had to train a lot, obviously, for both of those professions. You get tested in the classroom, you get tested on the job. Which one was harder for you to get a hang of and to be more comfortable? Trying a case in court, arguing in front of a judge or a jury, or between the lines and you're wearing the stripes and that all eyes are on you, just like they are in a courtroom?
And it sort of goes hand in hand a little. I can remember one game specifically that I'm on the sidelines and this coach is just blowing me up. And I calmly look at him and say, "Hey, look, coach, you're not going to say anything to me tonight that's going to rattle me." Effectively, I fight for a living. That's what I do. I'm an adversary to somebody every day. So, they kind of go hand in hand. And I talk football, you always have some feedback. When I'm talking to a jury, those 12 folks or 13 folks sitting in the box, if you've got an alternate up there, they just look at you sometimes. And if you're lucky, they might give you something. On the football field, if you're doing something, somebody's giving you some feedback, whether it be positive or negative. So that's reassurance sometimes, even negative feedback on the football field.
This is a PG-13 event, so keep that. No, I'm teasing, of course, but you're so right. You're going to get instant feedback, good, bad, or whatever, I'm sure, whenever you make a call or don't make a call, depending on who's watching from what sideline.
That's exactly right.
That's so interesting.
You know, even negative feedback can be reassuring sometimes on a football field, because you know that you've done something, and sometimes that negative feedback is reassurance that you did the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
In the courtroom, you don't get that sometimes. You know that if a judge is giving you some type of negative feedback, that's probably warranted, and you shouldn't have done what you did. And you know, feedback from a jury or so on and so forth, that is. But I will tell you this: law school did not teach me to be a lawyer, and you know that. I stepped out of law school and didn't know the first thing about trying a case. I mean, that's on job training.
Yeah.
You can do a lot of, you can read all the manuals, you can do all of that as far as officiating football, until you're out there and you're with these guys and you're kind of learning what's going on. That's where you learn your craft. And it's very important that as officials, we spend time perfecting our craft. And if we don't do that, and if we don't take that seriously, then that's obviously going to manifest itself on Friday nights.
So very true. And guys, I want to welcome a whole bunch of Cougars that have just rolled in. We got Steve Stutz, Justin Andrews, Brett Heisler, Bud Young, and I'm saving the last one because I don't know if you guys either are owed an apology from him or maybe you owe him an apology, but Coach Josh Parrish has just joined us. It's good to see you guys. I don't know if there's any unresolved game issues. I'm not trying to bring that up here, but I'm just letting you know he's out there watching. It's good to see you, Josh.
Yeah, it is. It's good to see Coach, but one of those names you named off is a guy that I can pretty much thank for having the mental ability to go to law school, in that he didn't let me get hit, and that was my center, Justin Andrews. So it's good to see you, buddy.
All right, so good to see you guys. Let's take it back a few years. Wayne, this is for you. What brought you guys to Dothan? What part of town did you settle in? And then Gantt, where'd you go to middle school? And then we'll eventually get to Northview. This first part's for Wayne.
Yeah, my family moved to Dothan in 1969 from Andalusia. And my father took a job with this as being his territory. And Andalusia has a very strong sports tradition over there. In fact, at one time, they held the longest winning streak in Alabama high school history. But we moved over here, went to Girard. It was junior high then, and then on to Dothan because there was no Northview at that time. And then graduated from Northview and then moved on to Tuscaloosa to go to school.
Excellent, excellent. And then did you also go to Girard, Gantt?
No, we moved here when I was in seventh grade, and we moved here from New Orleans on the North Shore, Mandeville. We moved here in seventh grade. We lived kind of off of Honeysuckle when we first got here. We were building a house on the west side of town. And so I went to Honeysuckle in seventh grade. And then in eighth grade, Carver at that time was all eighth grade, which, I think back on that. And I think a lot of my classmates that year at Carver was a very, it was an incredible time. It was a bunch of eighth graders who had come to that school. We had two football teams that we probably had 60 kids each.
Wow.
On both of those teams, maybe not that much. I can't remember, but that was the first year that I was that I played football, was eighth grade. I had never played football before eighth grade, but we had two football teams. We had two basketball teams, Carver Red and Carver Gray. And so we had the opportunity, all of us eighth graders, to come together to that school before we went on to Northview in ninth grade.
Now, did most of the guys or most of the students from Carver go on to Northview, or did some also go to Dothan High?
We all went to Northview. So the elementary schools, I guess, or the middle schools that they had gone to in 7th grade, all funneled into Carver. I didn't go with it to Carver with any of the kids that I'd gone to Honeysuckle with. I think they go to Beverly at that point in time, potentially, or maybe they stayed at Carver. But anyways, we all funneled into Carver, and then all of us. It was sort of like the stepping stone to Northview to the big school, and that was a really cool thing. And I still look back on those days and think how cool that was. We had 3 different pods. It seemed like it was a huge school to us. I mean, Carver's an old high school, and I think we did pretty well to fill that place up.
Wow. Yeah. Well, let's take it over to Northview. Obviously, you played multiple sports. You played baseball in college. When you were coming over to Northview, did you know at that time, going into 9th grade, that you wanted to play multiple sports, or were you just trying to concentrate on one, and then maybe a coach got a hold of you, or how did that transpire?
Yeah. I wanted to be Gabe Gross. I wanted to play all 3 sports. You know, Gabe
all wanted to be Gabe Gross.
Gabe was kind of like one of those folklore guys that you just you heard about. You didn't really know him. Everybody kind of talked about Gabe, and even to this day, I think back and you know, maybe not even maybe subconsciously, Gabe was a mentor to me, even though he didn't know me from Adam. That's kind of who I wanted to be. Had grown up playing every sport that I could get my hands on, and at Carver played football, basketball. We didn't have a baseball team or anything like that, so I was just going to transition into maybe trying to play all 3 sports at Northview. And so I always mess with Coach Floyd Griffin, and one day I told him, I said, "Hey, Coach, you know, I'm wanting to play baseball. I'm wanting to play basketball." And he kind of, in a very nice way, told me that he thought I needed to focus on football and baseball. So I took his words to heart and decided to do that. You know, basketball overlapped with baseball a little bit. And honestly, you know, I enjoyed playing basketball and played some church league basketball, but he was right. I really needed to focus my efforts on those 2 seasons where I didn't have any overlap and wouldn't miss any time during the baseball season.
Well, let's talk about 9th grade football. At the years when I was back in school, we practiced down in that bowl, the pit, if you will, that I think is now maybe a softball field.
Right.
But back then it was just an uncut, just dirt, gravel, and a little bit of grass if you were lucky, and no wind. There was no circulation of air. But that was your 9th grade experience. And by the time you came through, I think that the landscape was a lot different. So where did the 9th grade practice, and how was that in comparison to where the varsity was taking place?
Well, if you can remember where the varsity practiced on our practice field over there, the 9th grade, there's a huge grass area in between. If you were standing at the gym and you looked up towards 431, there's a huge grass spot.
Yeah.
And it's got an incline on it, but that's where we practiced out there.
Wow.
And depending upon, I was quarterback, but I also punted. And so if I was punting from 431 to the gym, or throwing a ball from 431 to the gym,
yeah,
then I was Superman. If I was going the other way, then not so much. So, but that's where we practiced.
Did you think you could reach the vocational center or the gym back there on certain days?
I don't know, man. It just seemed like that went on forever. And we didn't have any, it's not like they marked it off or did anything like that. It was just like, hey, line up right here, and we're going to keep going this way until I guess we hit the road up there, and then we'll turn around and maybe come back this way. Who
was your 9th grade coaches during your year?
The 2 that I remember very vividly is Janaski Fleming and Jay Bruner. And those guys, they they did not treat us like ninth graders. They treated us like we were varsity players, and they expected us to handle ourselves like we were varsity. Coach Fleming, who has become one of my dear friends, he had an impact on us that he didn't know he was having on us. He was a young coach. I think now talking to him, he would say that he was probably like a couple years out of college. But he expected us to be great every single day. Like, he did not let us let up for a second. And even when I'll never forget this. We were playing over at Enterprise as a ninth grade team, and we were okay. We weren't great. We might have gone 500. I don't remember what our record was, but we get over there to Enterprise and playing on that old field of theirs, and we won. And we wanted to dump water on Coach Fleming. And so I think that we either did or we came very close. And when he got us on that bus, he lit into us about trying to dump water on him, but to celebrate a win. Maybe that was our last game, but I mean, that's what I remember from that ninth grade year. And I'm always talking to him about that. It's pretty funny still, but they expected great things from us in ninth grade.
Well, that's what good coaches do. But if you can ever go find some game tape from Janaski when he played at Dothan High, he competed against one of my brothers. He's one of the finest athletes in high school in Wiregrass. And Wayne, maybe you can attest to this, but Janaski could do it all. It didn't matter the sport. He was a pure athlete. But Wayne, that's what I wanted to ask you. By the time Gantt got into high school, what was your position as far as Northview football games and officiating their contests?
Well, I took a couple of years off when Gantt played I don't think I took any time off when he was in the 10th grade, but I did take time off from officiating with his 11th and 12th grade year. And I mean, it gave me a good break, but it's, when I would go to contest, I would end up watching the officials. I knew, Gantt's jersey number, and I knew when he was in the game or on the sidelines, but I ended up, a lot of times just looking at the officials to see how they did their job. And so that's kind of what I did. I do remember, missing being out there, on the field officiating. But as a father, your responsibility and your desire is to see your kids play. And we got very active in the booster club.
Weren't you president one year?
I was, there was kind of a loose configuration of the booster clubs there but yeah, I did football, and then I ended up doing baseball also. We just got in there with other parents and worked to try to, raise money and to support the team. And, there was a big competition between Dothan High and Northview. And we tried to bring the two parties together, but there wasn't willing effort on the other side. So we did our thing, raised money, supported the school, went with the other parents to, ball games, tailgated a little bit, went out to eat after the games, things like that. And so we enjoyed those years.
Let me ask you, because my father also went to Dothan High. He's several years older than you are. But by the time his three boys went through Northview, he would tell you, I'm not rooting for my alma mater. I'm a Northview dad. And he still, even well after we graduated, still supported the program. So did my mother. They were now Northview family. Mom didn't grow up in Dothan, but Dad certainly did. And his sister, everybody went to Dothan High. What about your experience, Wayne? How do you feel? What developed with Gantt coming through and playing, and you rooting for Northview at that time?
Oh, is exactly how you just described your particular situation was. We instantly became Northview fans, Northview boosters, and we you know, I loved my time in high school, but you know, it was just a part of my life that it meant a lot to me. But when it was over, it was over. But we put our total effort into Northview and continue to support Northview all the way till the end. And we have a very fond spot in our heart for Northview, and just the parents, we got to meet the players, the coaches, the interaction with them is just it's an amazing part of our life, and we think about it with a smile on our face.
All right, Gann, I got to ask you about playing for Emory Latta. Talk about Coach Latta. What type of man, what type of coach was he?
Coach Latta was like the silent assassin, right? So he would get after us pretty good, and he was a quarterback's coach. And so he was my coach. I spent a lot of time with it. And Coach Latta, you knew there was no questions about what he expected from us. He let that be known. He was not one of these get in your face, yell at you type of guys. You knew what to expect. And he was a player's coach. I mean, you could talk to Coach about anything. You could go to him and explain what you were thinking, and he would take that to heart. He was our weightlifting coach as well. I have nothing but fond memories about Coach Latta. I can't tell you one time that me and him tied up, that he yelled at me, or there was respect. He respected us just like we respected him. I mean, it's sort of, we wanted to play for him. We wanted to make Coach proud, just like I'm sure that your team wanted to make Coach Parrish proud. We wanted him, when we got back in the film room on Monday, we wanted him to be proud of us. And I think that's imperative for a leader. And I think that's a quality that you see in good coaches and great coaches is the quality to have these young guys really want to play for you. And that's something that Coach Latta, he had that quality, and he still has that quality. I see him all the time. I see him on the sidelines at Providence. He's done a remarkable job with that school. He's grown it exponentially and done great things over there. He stepped away from the football program, and Coach Keith does a wonderful job over there with those guys. But it's always good seeing Coach Latta. We always talk about the good days, and yeah, you know, he's still a great guy. He's still my coach. I still call him Coach Latta. We'll always call him Coach Latta, and we'll always have a spot in my heart for the things that he showed me on the field, off the field. And, you know, he played a part in to making me who I am today through coaching me on the football field. And I appreciate that, and I always will appreciate that.
You know, it's obviously you're no longer the 16-year-old sophomore, but at that time he was Coach Latta. And you may be an adult with children and in your profession and married and all that good stuff. He's always going to be Coach Latta. And guys, if you're just joining us, or if you watch us on the replay, I've got Wayne Pierce and his son Gantt Pierce, and we're just going through some great memories in the late 90s playing for Coach Latta. And the unique thing is both men officiated for many years together on the same crew. And I forgot to ask you, Wayne, when Gantt was playing, did your crew, even though you stepped away, did your normal crew ever officiate for Gantt's games, or was that specifically avoided?
Probably tried to avoid that. I was trying to think who was in my crew before. Well, at that time, I guess I was still maybe working the line judge position, maybe the wing. Jackie Battles was my referee, and then Ricky Jones, Jonathan McNeil, and David Rogers, the back judge. So I was probably still working in that crew, but I don't recall them ever calling a Northview home game while Gantt was playing and I was on the sideline. You know, people, we try to obviously stay away from situations and circumstances that might raise an eyebrow. I remember my nephew, my brother Terry's youngest son played at Providence, and when and I helped make the schedule every year. You know, when a Providence game came along, even though he might be playing or he might not be starting, but there was a chance he would get in or whatever. We just stayed away from that game because it just was best for all parties. And no, I don't believe that I don't believe that the crew out when I was watching Gantt, I don't think my regular crew ever worked in Northview. Maybe one of them, maybe, or something like that.
Again, I got to ask you, were you more nervous your first game under center or your first game on a crew working a varsity game with your dad?
That's a great question. There wasn't ever a game that I played, whether it be in high school or college, that I wasn't almost sick nervous before the game. That's just the kind of guy I was. And the thing that I love about officiating, and people are like, why do you do that? Why would you want to take the ridicule? Why would you want, you know, all that? And my answer always is it gives me those same butterflies that I had when I was a player. And that adrenaline, and when you hear the band, and when you know the players are about to bust out of the paper, and the cheerleaders and the coaches on the sidelines, it's that same adrenaline that you get as a player. The nerves are similar when they're about to kick that ball, and you've got a Dothan High Northview game, or you've got a third round game in Spanish Fort against whoever. I can't remember who they're playing, but that was a big game, and the crowd's there and they're going crazy. It's the same feeling, and it's addictive. And even though it might be almost a sick feeling, or those nerves or your energy's so high, it's an addiction. And I get that same rush. Probably as a 10th grader, knowing that I was stepping out there to play 6A football, those nerves were probably worse than when I stepped on a football field to officiate the first time. But
what about your age difference? You're 15, 16-year-old playing a varsity under center as a 10th grader. How old were you for your first refereeing game?
On Friday nights, see, when I officiated in Nashville, you had to officiate, but that association in Nashville was so large, you probably had to officiate for 3 years or so before you got to a Friday night. Wow. And I remember telling Dad that, and Dad was like, "Man, if you were down here, you'd be on the field this Friday night." Mm-hmm. So when I come back to Dothan, literally, I'm on the field the first night. I had I had done some stuff in Nashville and stuff like that, but it was still, I was 26, 27-ish. And you have to remember when I stepped out there in 10th grade onto the varsity field in 6A football, I had only been playing football, organized football, for 2 years. And so, man, yep. I was just resided to the fact that I was about to get killed out there. Luckily, and if you still see, I've got a picture with a couple of my linemen from that 10th grade year, a recent picture, and Dedrick Roberson and Albert Williams, man, and those guys are huge steel compared to me. And so luckily I had a good line, and I was able to navigate that season without getting crushed. But man, I remember, I can remember that like it was yesterday, man. That was a nervous time.
I remember my first varsity action, and that was a little further back than when you were there. But speaking of some notable legendary Cougars, just joined us, Marquez White and Caleb Tillman. Thank you, fellas. Good to see you both on here. Appreciate you stopping by. Wayne, I want to ask you, You had mentioned earlier about notable players that had played in games that you officiated for. Run through some of those names, which I suspect we're all going to recognize.
Courtney Upshaw from Eufaula,
Mhm.
AJ McCarron from St. Paul's. Let's see, McCarron and Mark Barron, who both went on to sign with Alabama. There was a guy named Ivan Matchett on that same team. They ended up winning the state, by the way. I got them in the third round maybe or something, but he signed a pro baseball scholarship. Alabama wanted him. But, you know, the night McCarron played, we were down in Mobile at Ladd, and, you know, LSU was there. Major Applewhite was there, you know, from off the Alabama staff, and Clemson sit someone down. But yeah, those guys there.
Mac Wilson.
Yep, Mac Wilson. Electron. Auburn had a running back called Electron, and got to see him play up close and personal. But I think the one that sticks out the most was probably Courtney Upshaw. He was just, you know, he played at Eufaula, and that guy, I've never seen anybody attack on the high school level the ball like he did. I mean, if they had the ball, you know, he was on top of them. And he played both ways, but he was a beast. And that's probably the one that sticks out to me probably more than any of them.
You talked about Marquez White being on the we had him. I mean, he was a headhunter too. He goes on to play at Florida State. He played at Northview. Mac Wilson at Carver. Pretty much anybody that's been in this area in the last 20 years, Dad's probably had, and in the last 10 years, I have. We've got a guy that we called this year that I think is going to be a huge recruit for somebody who gets him, and that's Emmanuel Henderson at Geneva County High School. He's a 5-star guy, and he's the best running back that I've ever seen.
Bernard, I will tell you this. I over 28 years of calling football, I have seen and noticed players have gotten faster, stronger. It's just remarkable the amount of the training and things like that, and the weights and the nutrition and all that. But that's one thing I've noticed. It's just, and of course, the whole offensive and defensive schemes have changed so much. You know, they go four wide and start spreading it out and throwing it around. And but that's one thing I've noticed, that the players have definitely gotten stronger and faster, and it's hard to keep up with them sometimes.
High schools are running offensive and defensive schemes that colleges were doing 5 and 10 years ago. Colleges are running what the pros were running a few years ago. It truly is remarkable to go to a high school game now and see just how sophisticated they were. Guys, when we won the state championship in '85, we only had a handful of offensive running plays and a handful of passing plays. We ran the run and shoot, a few different misdirections and things, but we looked, you know, we figured it out, but nothing compared to what the guys are doing now. But enough about me. I want to welcome Coach Randy Hicks, who was one of my coaches back in the day, and Chris Smith. I want to thank you guys for stopping by, talking with Wayne and Gantt Pierce. We've got just a couple more minutes, fellas, and I sure appreciate your time and running through some memories and some experiences. Gantt, this one's for you. I want you to take us to one of your favorite on-field memories when you were playing for the Cougars. It may have been a win, it may have been a loss, it may have been something on or off the field, but what's something that you can either relive with your buddies when you see them, or maybe brings a smile to your face if you see a photo or something like that, that really is something that's a lifelong memory for you?
Yeah, the thing that I always think about is, and I think I was in 11th grade, and we go down to Daphne and we lose the game. We weren't supposed to win the game. And you talked about Coach Latta and what he did. He always instilled into us that we had the opportunity to win the game. And there was never a Friday night that we stepped on the field where it was like, hey, you know, we might not be able to win this game. And so we go down to Daphne, and Daphne's one of the top teams in the entire state. And we go down there, and I can remember passing the ball. It was late in the game, and I throw a long touchdown pass. And I remember running to the sidelines and being so excited. I think the game was in hand for Daphne at that point in time. But just as a young kid, being able to throw that long pass, and in my center, Justin Andrews was on the sideline, and I can remember me and him being so excited about us scoring. And like I said, we lost the game, but that's one play that I remember for some reason in my mind, and it kind of encapsulates the high school football experience, which is camaraderie, brotherhood, and an opportunity to compete with some of your best friends in the entire world, and guys that are still my friends. And even though we lost the game, we went down there, we gave it everything we had. We had a guy on the team who was the best football player I played with by far. And I all my teammates would say the same, a guy named Johnny Falk, who went on and played at Troy State. Is still one of my great friends to this day, lives over in Atlanta, has moved over there in the past couple of years from Dothan. But we were all on that team. We had a lot of fun, and even though it was a loss, that's one play I can remember very vividly in my head.
Oh, that's what it's all about right there, those kind of memories. And speaking of Eufaula High School, we've got the principal of Eufaula, Revis Gertman, is joined us. Hey, Revis, thank you, bud. It's good to see you. Next time I'm in Eufaula, I'll make sure that we hook up and go get some Phil's barbecue, I hope, sometime soon. Guys, let me ask you, last question for you, Wayne, as we're about to wrap up. Biggest thrill for you watching Gantt succeed on the field, being a crew member with him, or some other father, stick my chest out, I'm so proud of what my boy has done memory that you'd like to share?
Yeah, well, I guess it would have to be that Daphne game Gantt was talking about. I mean, they were like Goliath, and we were coming in there like David. And I mean, there was no way that we were going to be able to go down there and take a win away. But yeah, that, and throughout his baseball career, we made it, I guess, to the third round one year. We played a team out of Mobile that was really
McGill-Tulane.
Yeah, McGill-Tulane. That was Gantt's senior year. It torn his ACL in the second game football season at Lanier. We were playing at Crampton Bowl. He tore his ACL. We never thought he had finished his senior year in baseball, and he rehabbed hard. Went to the Alabama-Auburn game, met Joe Namath outside the Alabama locker room, and Gantt was still on crutches, and talked to him, and he told Gantt to work real hard and rehab, and he did, and came back. And I was probably more proud of him doing that, to be able to play his senior year in baseball, and for us to all go all the way to the third round and play.
Awesome. I know about third rounds. I know this isn't about me, but I still am bitter. My sophomore year, we lost to Fairhope in the third round at Northcutt Field, and we should have won that game, but that's a whole nother day. Oh, who we got there, guys?
I got twin boys who have snuck up here.
Hey.
They look like some players. Right there.
They are. They're going to be hopefully football and baseball players.
Excellent. Well, Gantt, I'm going to give you the last word tonight. Since you got the boys right there, give them a life lesson, so when they watch this in 10 years, they're going to know how smart their dad was at that time.
No, look, these boys, something that was always instilled in me was give everything you got, no matter if you feel good, you don't feel good, whether you got it that day and don't have it that day. Give everything you have, leave everything on the field, and at the end of the day, you'll be proud with yourself. Dad taught me that early on. That's something that I tried to play with. And I hope these boys will have the opportunity to do the same. And that's give it everything they got every time they get out there. And if they do that, they'll be proud with the effort that they've put out, and win, lose, or draw, they can say they left everything on the field.
We got almost a full crew right here, Bernard.
You sure do. That looks like fun.
A line judge, a linesman. We got kind of an umpire and back judge.
Well, your two sons, your grandsons, Wayne, your sons, Gantt, have such a great foundation with the two of y'all. And I want to thank you both for spending such a quality time with me. I got to learn a little bit more about you guys and had a great conversation. So thank you for spending some time with us tonight.
We've enjoyed it very much.
And I'll say again, thank you for everything that you do as
Absolutely.
far as trying to put all this history together and give us something that we can show our kids, and maybe they'll be able to show their kids one day. So thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. And guys, I've got these lined up all through December. I'm going to take a little break at the end of the month, and then we're going to hit it back in January. But we will see you again for Conversations with Cougars next Wednesday night. Y'all have a safe week. Take care.